FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
We ask Professor Alan Sachs to come on. He's a professor of political science at UT Arlington to talk a little bit more about the Hillary Clinton and the Donald Trump economic plans. Professor Sachs, thanks for calling in. How are you?
I appreciate it very much. Thank you, sir.
Well, good to have you on again. I understand that Donald Trump's coming out today to talk about foreign policy, but before we get to that speech, we're still kind of digesting the Hillary Clinton speech from last week, the Donald Trump speech from last week, laying out what they want to do economically.
Exactly. Last week, both Donald Trump, last Monday, a week ago today, and Mrs. Clinton last Thursday made battling economic speeches before the Detroit Economic Club, of all the places, the Detroit Economic Club, and almost an oxymoron. But they couldn't be more far apart. Donald Trump called for tax reductions across the board, get rid of the estate tax, lower the corporate income tax to 15%, lower the tax brackets, eliminate some of them from 7 down to 3, on and on like that. Invest in infrastructure. They both want that. Hillary Clinton increased taxes, of course, on the wealthy, and then she proposed free college education for community colleges and reduce debt at universities for students who are going there. And then she added an interesting phrase called the Patriot Tax. And the Patriot Tax is going to be a tax on companies that move jobs overseas. Now, how in the world that's going to work, I'm not sure. My mind doesn't operate that way. But those were their competing plans. Both of them will add a little bit to the debt. Mrs. Clinton's more than Donald Trump and to the deficit, but they don't seem to care about it. They both want to spend an awful lot of money, especially Mrs. Clinton.
Well, when I looked at her plan, the first thing that struck me is that there was absolutely nothing new in there that we haven't seen from just about everybody who's run as a Democrat the last 15 or 20 years.
It is the same thing. It's interesting because right before the phone call with your station, I was listening to a speech that Mrs. Clinton was making in Scranton, Pennsylvania, I believe, and she referenced Milwaukee a little bit. And the thing triggered in my mind is that Democratic liberal policies have created the situation in Milwaukee, and now she's trying to solve the situation that her own party created. I think Milwaukee's had Democratic mayors ever since the very early part of the 20th century. And so the problem is theirs, and then they try to solve it.
Well, it's such a dramatic difference between these two policies, Professor. It's been my theory that if Donald Trump would just give alternating speeches week to week, one on the economy, one on ISIS, one on the economy, one on ISIS, and then not talk to anybody in between and shut down his Twitter account, he might have a chance.
I agree with you completely. I was thinking today he has to forget about his Twitter account. He has to not look at the audience. Whenever he looks at the audience, he becomes a showman. Stick to the script. Go to the teleprompter. Make your speech. And about 30 minutes from now, I think he's going to make a very important speech about ISIS and terrorism, very important issues. Mrs. Clinton already addressed those issues, what I was listening to a couple of minutes ago, beating up on Donald Trump without even listening to his speech. But that's the way it goes. The Clinton machine is off and running. They're spending thousands, millions of dollars in every state. It'll total probably close to $2 billion. She said at this audience today in Pennsylvania, she actually said, we're hiring people. You know, look onto this website, hook onto it, we're hiring people. That's where money is really going to make a big difference. She's going to hire thousands of volunteers all over the country. They've already been hired. They have these huge commercials, political ads on. Donald Trump has had very little of that. So it's a so-called ground game of Hillary Clinton that is going to make a lot of difference in the end.
Well, Professor Sachs, I appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to having you on again.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it very much. St. Louis is a great town.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your time. That is political science professor Dr. Alan Sachs there from University of Texas in Arlington.